Entrenched Echoes by Oceanera 12. Chapter 4, Shattered Psyche. 4 was starting to grow impatient, which was bad, especially with the current job he had ahead of him. 4 had met up with Wild and Twilight, both of them growling for blood because someone had murdered Sky in cold blood and stolen the Master Sword. Honestly, how stupid could Wild be? Twilight kept trying to meet 4's eye, but the smithy was more determined to watch their surroundings. As far as he could tell, what was left of the others was starting to gather together. No doubt they had started to find the bodies. Twilight appeared determined to rejoin the group, which was the last thing they should do right now. Of course, Twilight wouldn't know that. All he knew was Sky was down and they needed to find the others before something else happened. But, with Twilight drawing them closer and closer to the rest, 4 realized he had no choice, especially when Twilight finally caught his eye, his expression grim. 4 looked at Wild, who was running ahead, unaware of what was about to happen. Well, 4 didn't really have a choice, now did he? 4 drew his sword, slowly and quietly, praying Wild wouldn't notice. He didn't, much too focused on trying to keep a lookout for Sky's killer. Too bad he didn't realize he'd already found them. 4 moved into position, he took a deep breath and let it out slowly. And then, he stabbed Twilight through the ribs. Unfortunately, 4 had forgotten that Twilight had chainmail, which made the sword do more bruising than actual cutting, which meant Twilight's eyes were now on 4, and 4 regretted his action immediately. The two stared at each other for a moment, 4's sword against Twilight's side, a clear attempt on his life. "Oops," 4 finally said, a tiny smirk on his face. Twilight's gaze turned red. "You." "Me," 4 agreed. He flipped back at Twilight's swipe and tightened his grip on his sword. He rushed Twilight, hoping to overwhelm him with quick jabs. He needed to do this quickly before. "4, what are you doing?" That happened. Wild had his bow out and had fired off 3 warning shots before 4 could even attempt to explain, but Twilight was quicker, meeting Wild's eye and pointing at 4. "He killed Sky." Wild's aim faltered. He looked at 4, eyes wide. "What?" 4 saw no sense in hiding it. Wild had apparently seen him trying to kill Twilight for no reason. He shrugged. "Had it coming, champion. Now stay out of the way." Twilight growled and bared his teeth. "Traitor." "Glad to be of service." 4 lunged at Twilight, his own teeth bared. 4 had to make this quick. Wild was too shocked to do anything at the moment, but that shock was going to fade, and 4 would rather not have to fight 2 Lynx at once. Twilight and 4 clashed swords, actions quick with swipes, jabs, and parries. 4 forgot how good the rancher was at swordplay. Pain suddenly flared through 4's right shoulder. He jumped back from the fight to find an arrow shaft in his upper arm. He gritted his teeth and ripped it free, eyes turning to Wild's position. The champion had now jumped into the fight and was standing shoulder to shoulder with Twilight. "Thanks, pup." Twilight took the moment to take a breather. Wild nodded jerkily, eyes fixed on 4. Their gaze was cold, and 4 knew he was out of time. "Well, time to do the unexpected." He put his sword point in the ground and leaned on it, giving Wild his best evil smirk. "You know, I was getting bored with this little game. I'm kind of glad you noticed, champion. Then again, that didn't end so well for the last one." Wild pulled back an arrow at full draw. "What are you talking about?" 4 shrugged. "Oh, Sky was easy enough to sneak up on." He paused, his grin widening. "But Wind? He didn't even have time to scream." Wild's eyes bulged. Twilight growled. He sprinted at 4, shifting into his wolf form as he ran, then lunged with barely constrained anger. Just as 4 had hoped. 4 jumped back, allowing the wolf to tackle him, but rolling with the motion. He pulled out a knife and slashed the wolf's stomach open. 4 continued to roll just in time for Wild's angry yell and firing of an arrow to impact straight through Twilight's ear. The wolf howled in pain, and 4 quickly ducked behind the body to keep Wild from shooting him. The wolf was trying to tear out 4's throat, and actually got a good bite on 4's arm, but he didn't pay too much attention. While the wolf was busy with his arm, 4 threw the dagger in the direction of the charging Wild, forcing the champion to dodge, which gave 4 time to reach back and grab hold of his sword and shove it straight through the wolf's stomach. "No!" 4 yanked the sword out and cut out of the air the several arrows shot at him. He wasn't able to stop all of them, and several nicked his arms, with one drawing a nasty cut across his cheek and another lodging in his arm. Wild shot until his quiver was empty, allowing for 4 to stab the wolf one more time, just to make sure. He saluted Wild. "Sorry, champion, but I've got other targets to deal with before I deal with you." Wild let out an unearthly scream, charging at 4 with only a bow. What's he gonna do with just a bow? Knowing Wild, probably smack him over the head. Oh well, 4 was already on the run. 7 down, 2 to go. 4 was going to be sick. He could feel his lunch threatening to come back up, but he swallowed it back down. Twilight didn't look much better. Actually, probably looked worse than 4 because that was Wild. Or at least, it had been Wild at some point in time, but now... Twilight's shaking hands reached out and took the large, now blood-soaked cloak of the champion and gently pulled it over what was left of the body. It's fresh, Twilight whispered. Not more than a few minutes. 4 closed his eyes and tried to remember how to breathe. If they'd been 10 minutes quicker with that rock, then maybe... No, the 2 were headed up. Wild was below them. If they'd been 10 minutes earlier, then they never would have found or heard Wild. 10 minutes sooner would have meant Twilight and 4 being oblivious to the fact that something had killed their friend. Something had murdered Wild. Something is going to die a very painful death. We need to stay calm, Blue. Be rational. I'll be rational whenever this is in the ground. Green, please tell Blue. Not now, Vio. Please. A sob from Red broke through the surface. 4 buried his face in his hands, the colors trying to calm Red down, but there was no consoling him. The tears streamed freely, and 4 fell to his knees. It was like losing Shadow all over again, only this was worse because this had been a senseless slaughter. There was nothing heroic or legendary about dying in a temple in an unfamiliar land. Alone. Wild had died alone in an unfamiliar land, with no one there to tell him what a good person and hero he was. He died alone without a familiar, loving faces around him. He died without whispering thank yous and comforting hands to hold until Wild had been alone. Alone. 4 screamed. Strong, shaking hands wrapped around 4 and pulled him into a tight hug, burying 4's face into cotton over chainmail. 4 cried and screamed and pounded his fists on Twilight's chest because it wasn't fair. It just wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that Wild died, or that he died alone, and it definitely wasn't fair to Twilight that 4 couldn't hold himself together for 5 minutes, because no matter how much he was hurting, it had to be 10 times worse for Twilight. But he couldn't stop crying. End of chapter 4.